Don't worry, boys, nobody's freezing to death out here tonight. Walter Briggs pulled his coat tighter against the bitter Wyoming wind as he stepped onto the snow-covered porch. At 68 years old, the retired Army veteran had lived alone for nearly a decade in the small cabin his father had built beneath the shadow of the Bighorn Mountains. Winter storms had a way of making the world feel smaller out here. The nearest end town sat almost 20 miles away, and on nights like this, with snow blowing sideways across, the valley and temperatures dropping below 10 degrees Fahrenheit, it felt like another world entirely. Chief, the German shepherd who had been at Walter's side for 7 years, stood beside the porch railing with his ears raised. The dog wasn't looking at the storm. He was staring into the darkness beyond the tree line. Walter noticed it immediately. Chief was many things: loyal, intelligent, protective, but nervous wasn't one of them. "What is it, buddy?" Walter asked quietly. Chief didn't move. The wind howled through the pines. Snow drifted across the yard in white waves. Then Walter heard it. A faint sound carried through the storm. Not a howl, not a bark, something weaker, desperate. Chief bolted from the porch before Walter could say another word. "Chief." Walter grabbed a flashlight and followed. The snow crunched beneath his boots as he pushed through the icy wind. Chief moved quickly toward the edge of the woods, stopping beside a fallen pine tree nearly 50 yards from the cabin. Walter swept the flashlight beam across the ground. 2 dogs lay partially buried in snow beneath the branches. Both were large shepherd-type dogs, their fur coated with ice. One barely lifted its head. The other trembled so badly, Walter wondered how it was still conscious. Chief stood over them protectively. Walter knelt immediately. "Easy now," he said softly. Neither dog showed aggression. They looked exhausted, scared, cold. Walter had seen that look before, long ago. Different faces, different circumstances, but the same helpless exhaustion. "Come on," he muttered. "Let's get you warm." It took nearly 15 minutes to guide them back to the cabin. Inside, the wood stove glowed orange against the darkness. Warm air slowly filled the room as Walter wrapped blankets around the 2 strangers. Chief never left their side. The larger dog drank water cautiously. The smaller one curled into a tight ball beside the stove and fell asleep almost immediately. Hours passed. The storm continued outside. Walter sat in his old chair, sipping coffee, while Chief remained on watch near the blankets. Something felt unusual. These weren't stray dogs. Their coats were clean beneath the ice. Their paws showed signs of training and conditioning. Even exhausted, they carried themselves differently. Around midnight, Walter finally stood and approached the sleeping animals. As he adjusted one of the blankets, his hand brushed against something hidden beneath the thick fur around the dog's neck. He frowned. Slowly, he reached deeper and pulled free a small metal tag attached beneath the collar. It wasn't a normal identification tag. No name, no address, no phone number. Just a series of engraved numbers and a strange symbol Walter had never seen before. Across the room, Chief suddenly stood, his ears locked onto the tag. The German shepherd stared at it for several seconds. Then, for the first time that night, he let out a low growl toward the dark window facing the snow-covered woods. Walter remained still for several seconds, staring at the metal tag in his hand. The fire crackled softly inside the cabin while snow tapped against the windows. Chief did not take his eyes off the darkness outside. "All right," Walter said quietly. "You know something I do not." The German shepherd let out another low rumble. Walter walked to the kitchen table and placed the tag beneath the overhead light. The symbol looked unfamiliar. It was not military. It was not a county license. It was not anything he recognized. Beneath it sat a string of numbers stamped with perfect precision. "Well, that is strange," he muttered. One of the rescued dogs slowly lifted its head from the blanket. Its brown eyes followed the tag immediately. Walter noticed the reaction. "You recognize this thing, do you?" The dog stared for another moment before lowering its head again. Around 2 in the morning, Walter finally managed to get some sleep in his recliner. Chief refused to leave the living room. The old veteran woke several times during the night, and each time he found Chief sitting in exactly the same place, watching the 2 newcomers. By sunrise, the storm had passed. Pale winter sunlight spilled across the valley outside. Walter poured coffee into a chipped mug and looked toward the blankets. Both dogs were awake now. They appeared stronger after a night beside the stove. "Morning, boys," Walter said. "How are we feeling today?" The larger dog stood carefully. The smaller one followed. Neither barked. Neither approached the food bowl Walter placed on the floor. Instead, both dogs looked toward the table where the metal tag rested. Chief immediately stepped between them and the table. "Easy," Walter said. "Nobody is taking anything." The strange behavior bothered him. Hungry dogs usually ate first. These 2 seemed focused on something else entirely. A few minutes later, Walter opened the cabin door to clear snow from the porch. Chief followed him outside. The cold air carried the scent of pine and fresh snow. Everything seemed peaceful until Chief suddenly froze. His ears stood straight up. His body became rigid. "What now?" Walter asked. Chief stared down the narrow road leading toward the property. Walter followed his gaze. A black SUV was moving slowly through the valley below, not unusual by itself. But the vehicle reduced speed even further. As it approached the turnoff leading toward Walter's cabin, the driver seemed to be studying the property. Walter narrowed his eyes. Lost, maybe? The SUV stopped for several seconds. Then it continued down the road without turning. Chief did not relax. Neither did Walter. Something about it felt wrong. Later that morning, while brushing ice from the larger dog's coat, Walter discovered something else hidden beneath the fur. A second collar, much thinner than the first, almost invisible. "What are you carrying around, friend?" he asked. He carefully unfastened the narrow strap. A tiny compartment rested inside the collar lining. Walter opened it and pulled out a folded piece of waterproof paper. His expression changed immediately. There was only one thing written on it, a set of coordinates. Chief stepped forward and stared at the paper. Then he turned sharply toward the forest behind the cabin and barked once. Walter looked from the paper to Chief and then toward the forest. "You want me to follow that, do you?" Chief barked again. The two rescued dogs immediately stood and faced the same direction. Walter folded the paper and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "All right, I have spent enough years ignoring bad ideas. No reason to start now." He grabbed his coat, binoculars, and truck keys. The morning sun hung low above the snow-covered hills as he stepped outside. Chief moved ahead while the other two dogs stayed close behind. The coordinates continued to bother him. Whoever hid them inside a collar had wanted them protected. That much seemed obvious. 20 minutes later, Walter parked his old pickup near the edge of a frozen meadow, less than 3 miles from the cabin. The coordinates had led him there. Nothing appeared unusual at first glance. Snow, pines, silence. "This better be worth the hike," Walter muttered. Chief immediately started moving across the meadow. The other dogs followed without hesitation. Walter adjusted his cap and walked behind them. Halfway across the clearing, Chief stopped beside a cluster of large boulders. The German Shepherd lowered his nose and began sniffing around the snow. "What did you find?" Walter asked. Chief pawed at the ground. Walter knelt and brushed away several inches of snow. Beneath it sat an old metal marker partially hidden by ice. He stared at it. "Well, that should not be here." The marker carried the exact same symbol he had seen on the tag. Before he could examine it further, the sound of an engine echoed through the trees. Walter immediately stood. A vehicle was approaching somewhere beyond the ridge. Chief became alert. The rescued dogs moved closer to Walter. Instinct took over. Years of military service had taught him when something felt wrong. "Come on," he whispered. "Let us stay out of sight." They moved behind the rocks as the sound grew louder. Moments later, a black SUV appeared on a narrow service road less than 200 yards away. Walter recognized it immediately. It was the same vehicle he had seen near the cabin earlier that morning. The SUV slowed near the edge of the meadow. 2 men stepped out. Walter could not hear every word carried by the wind, but he caught enough. "They cannot be far. Check the area again. We need those dogs." Walter frowned. Chief remained perfectly still beside him. The rescued dogs watched the strangers with unusual focus. "Those men are looking for you," Walter whispered. One of the dogs let out a soft whine. The men searched for several minutes before returning to the SUV. Eventually, the vehicle disappeared beyond the trees. Walter waited another minute before standing. "All right," he said quietly. "Now I know this is not an accident." He turned back toward the metal marker. Something about it seemed different now. He pulled a small pocket knife from his coat and carefully chipped away the surrounding ice. As the frozen layer broke apart, he discovered a narrow compartment hidden beneath the marker. Inside rested a waterproof flash drive. Walter stared at it in disbelief. Beside him, Chief suddenly lifted his head toward the distant road. This time it was not one vehicle approaching. It sounded like several. "That is definitely not a sightseeing group," Walter muttered, as the distant engine noise echoed through the valley. He slipped the flash drive into his jacket pocket and looked down at Chief. The German Shepherd remained focused on the ridge beyond the trees. The 2 rescued dogs stood shoulder to shoulder beside him, unusually calm despite the approaching vehicles. "Time to head home," Walter said. "Whatever this thing is, I would rather look at it with 4 walls around me." The hike back to the truck felt longer than before. Walter could not shake the feeling that someone else knew about the flash drive. Twice he stopped and listened. Twice he heard nothing except the wind moving through the pines. yet Chief kept checking behind them. By early afternoon, they reached the cabin. Walter locked the front door and closed every curtain. He placed the flash drive on the kitchen table and stared at it. "You three have brought more excitement into my life in 24 hours than I have had in 10 years. Chief sat beside the table. One of the rescued dogs slowly approached and placed its paw on Walter's knee. "You want me to open it?" Walter asked. The dog stared at him. "I am taking that as a yes." Walter carried an old laptop from the spare bedroom and plugged it in. The machine took nearly 5 minutes to start. "Come on," he grumbled. "You move slower than I do." Finally, the screen came to life. Walter inserted the flash drive. To his surprise, only one folder appeared. No name, no description, just a date from 6 months earlier. "That is not suspicious at all," he said. He clicked it open. Several video files appeared. The first clip lasted less than 30 seconds. Walter pressed play. The footage showed a wooded area somewhere in the mountains. The camera moved rapidly, as if attached to something running through the trees. Then the video ended. "What am I supposed to be looking at?" Walter asked. He opened a second file. This time the footage lasted longer. Again, the perspective appeared unusually low to the ground. Suddenly, he realized what he was seeing. These videos were recorded by a dog. Chief immediately lifted his ears. Walter leaned closer to the screen. The footage showed trails, vehicles, buildings, and several unfamiliar faces. Nothing dangerous, nothing dramatic, yet it clearly documented places hidden deep within the mountains. Walter opened a third file. The rescued dogs became alert the moment it started. The video showed a remote fenced property surrounded by dense forest. Several trucks sat near large storage buildings. Walter frowned. "What is this place?" The camera moved closer, then the footage abruptly stopped. At that exact moment, a vehicle door slammed outside. Walter froze. Chief sprang to his feet. All 3 dogs rushed toward the front window. "Nobody should be here," Walter said quietly. Another door slammed. Then came the sound of footsteps crunching through snow toward the porch. A sharp knock echoed against the cabin door. Walter stood motionless. The knocking came again. A calm voice called from outside. "Mr. Briggs, we would like to ask you a few questions about some missing dogs." Walter glanced toward the front door but did not move immediately. Chief stood rigid beside the window, watching the figures outside. The 2 rescued dogs had backed away from the door entirely. Their reaction told him more than the voice on the porch. "That is interesting," Walter said quietly. "You boys do not seem eager to meet our visitors." Another knock echoed through the cabin. "Mr. Briggs," the voice called again, "we only need a moment." Walter stepped closer to the window and carefully pulled back the curtain by half an inch. 2 men stood on the porch wearing dark winter jackets. Neither carried any visible law enforcement markings. No patrol vehicle sat outside. Only a dark SUV parked near the road, the same SUV. Walter released the curtain. "Those are not deputies," he muttered. Chief gave a low growl in agreement. "Exactly what I was thinking." The knocking came again, louder this time. "Mr. Briggs, are you home?" Walter looked around the cabin. The laptop still sat open on the table. The flash drive remained plugged into the side. Whatever those men wanted, he doubted it was simply about lost dogs. Moving quickly, he removed the flash drive and slipped it into his pocket. Then he closed the laptop. The rescued dogs immediately relaxed slightly as the device disappeared. Walter noticed that reaction. "You recognize that drive too?" One of the dogs tilted its head. Before he could think further, a phone began ringing somewhere inside the cabin. Walter frowned. Almost nobody called him. He crossed the room and picked up the old landline receiver mounted near the kitchen wall. "Walter Briggs." For several seconds, there was only static. Then a woman's voice spoke quickly. "Do not open that door." Walter straightened. "Who is this?" "There is no time. The men outside are not looking for missing dogs." "Then what are they looking for?" A brief pause followed. "They are looking for what the dogs carried." Walter's eyes moved toward the 2 shepherds. "Who are you?" "Someone trying to help." "That is not much of an introduction." "Listen carefully," she continued. "The dogs escaped 6 months ago. They were never supposed to reach anyone. If those men realize what you found, they will not stop searching." Walter lowered his voice. "What exactly did I find?" Another pause. "Proof." The line suddenly went dead. Walter stared at the receiver. "Well," he said softly, "that clears up absolutely nothing." Outside, an engine started. He moved to the window again. The 2 men had returned to the SUV. Moments later, the vehicle drove away. Chief remained alert long after it disappeared beyond the trees. "Something tells me that was not the end of it," Walter said. He returned to the table and reopened the laptop. This time he examined the video files more carefully. Near the bottom of the folder, he noticed one file he had missed before. It carried a simple name, Final Recording. Walter clicked it. The screen flickered. Grainy footage appeared. The camera moved through the same forest shown in the earlier videos. Then the image stopped on a wooden sign posted beside a remote gravel road. Walter leaned closer. His heart skipped a beat. He recognized the location immediately. It was less than 15 miles from his cabin. Beside him, Chief suddenly jumped to his feet and ran toward the back door as someone began walking across the snow behind the house. Chief reached the back door before Walter did. The German Shepherd stood motionless, staring through the small glass pane. The two rescued dogs rushed over and joined him. All three animals focused on the same point outside. "You boys are making me nervous," Walter said. He carefully looked through the window. A lone figure stood near the tree line behind the cabin. A woman. She wore a dark winter coat and carried no visible equipment. She raised both hands slightly when she noticed Walter watching. "Mr. Briggs," she called, "please do not send the dogs away." Walter frowned. "That is an unusual way to introduce yourself." The woman managed a tired smile. "May I come inside? I think we need to talk." Walter hesitated. Every instinct told him to be cautious. Yet the dogs were behaving differently than they had with the men from the SUV. Chief was alert but not growling. The rescued dogs seemed almost relieved. After a moment, Walter opened the door. Cold air rushed into the cabin. "You have 30 seconds, he said. "Convince me." The woman stepped inside and immediately looked at the two rescued dogs. Emotion flashed across her face. "Thank God," she whispered. One of the dogs walked directly to her and pressed its head against her hand. Walter noticed everything. "You know them?" "Yes." "Who are they?" She glanced toward the windows before answering. "Their names are Ranger and Scout." Walter looked surprised. "They have names. They were part of a specialized search and tracking program." Chief sat beside Walter and watched the woman closely. "And you are?" Walter asked. "Emily Carter, the woman who called me?" Emily nodded. "I did not have much time." Walter crossed his arms. "Then start from the beginning." Emily took a deep breath. 6 months ago, Ranger and Scout disappeared during an operation in these mountains. Everyone believed they were lost, but they were not. No, they found something they were never supposed to find. Walter exchanged a glance with Chief. Emily's eyes widened. "You found them." "I found more than that. I found coordinates, a hidden marker, a flash drive." Emily slowly sat down. "Then the situation is worse than I thought." Walter pulled the flash drive from his pocket and placed it on the table. "What exactly is on this thing?" Emily looked at it carefully. "Evidence." "Evidence of what?" She hesitated. "A secret operation hidden inside those mountains." Before Walter could ask another question, a loud engine echoed outside. Emily immediately stood. Her face lost all color. "They found me." Walter moved to the window. 3 dark SUVs were approaching from the road, not speeding, not rushing, just moving with quiet confidence. Chief stepped forward. Ranger and Scout joined him. All 3 dogs stared toward the vehicles. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. "Mr. Briggs." "Yes? Do you still know the location from that final video?" Walter nodded slowly. Emily looked toward the approaching convoy. "Then we need to get there before they do." Walter did not waste another second. He grabbed his truck keys from the counter and pointed toward the door. "Everybody moves now." Emily nodded immediately. Chief was already there, waiting. Ranger and Scout followed close behind. Outside, the distant SUVs continued climbing the snowy road. They still had a few minutes, maybe less. Walter started the pickup, and the old engine rumbled to life. "Tell me where we are going," Emily said as she climbed into the passenger seat. "There was a sign in the final video," Walter replied. "Old logging access road near Dry Creek Ridge." "I know exactly where it is." Chief sat behind them while Ranger and Scout occupied the rear of the cab. The moment the truck pulled away, all 3 dogs became alert. Walter noticed it in the rearview mirror. Those dogs know what is waiting there. Emily looked back at them. More than anyone realizes, the truck bounced across frozen back roads for nearly 40 minutes. Snow-covered pines lined both sides of the narrow route. The mountains rose around them like silent walls. Finally, Walter slowed. There, a weathered wooden sign stood beside a gravel path almost hidden beneath snowdrifts. It matched the one from the video perfectly. Emily stared at it. "This is the place." Walter parked behind a cluster of trees. "Then let us find out why everyone wants it so badly." The moment they stepped out, Ranger pulled forward. Scout followed. Chief moved beside Walter. The 3 dogs headed into the forest without hesitation. "Looks like they are leading," Walter said. Emily managed a nervous smile. They always were good at finding things. The hike lasted nearly 20 minutes. Then the dogs stopped simultaneously. Ahead stood an abandoned maintenance building tucked against a rocky hillside. Most of the structure had disappeared beneath years of snow and pine growth. Walter stared at it. "Nobody has used this place in decades. That is what they wanted people to believe." Emily replied. Ranger approached a rusted metal door hidden behind fallen branches. The dog pawed at the ground repeatedly. Chief joined him. Walter stepped closer and cleared away snow. Beneath it, he discovered a modern electronic lock mounted beside the old door. His eyes narrowed. That does not belong here. Emily looked stunned. Someone kept using this place. Scout suddenly barked once. Walter turned. Fresh tire tracks cut through the snow on the far side of the building. Not old tracks, recent ones. We are not first, he said quietly. For a moment, nobody spoke. The mountain wind moved through the trees. Then Chief walked directly to the door and pressed his nose against the electronic panel. A faint green light suddenly flashed. Emily gasped. No way. Another light appeared. Then another. Somewhere inside the hillside, machinery hummed to life. Walter stepped back as the hidden door slowly unlocked. The dogs immediately focused on the dark opening beyond it. From somewhere deep inside the mountain came the sound of a single electronic tone, as though something had just awakened after a very long sleep. Walter exchanged a glance with Emily. After you, he said. Not a chance, Emily replied. You opened it. Walter smiled faintly. Fair point. He stepped through the doorway first. Chief followed so closely, their shoulders almost touched. Ranger and Scout entered behind them, while Emily pulled the heavy door shut enough to hide the entrance from outside. The passage beyond was surprisingly clean. Concrete walls stretched deep into the mountain. Dim emergency lights glowed along the ceiling. This place still has power, Walter said. Someone maintained it. Emily nodded. For years, apparently. They moved cautiously through the corridor. The dogs led the way, navigating turns without hesitation. It was as though they had been here before. After nearly 200 feet, the tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber. Walter stopped cold. Rows of computer stations lined the walls. Large monitors hung dark above long work tables. Filing cabinets filled one side of the room. Everything appeared abandoned, yet not old. This cannot be real, Emily whispered. Chief walked directly toward a central workstation. Ranger and Scout followed him. Walter approached and brushed dust from a monitor. A small indicator light glowed green. Still running, he said. Emily looked stunned. Who builds something like this under a mountain? Walter did not answer. His attention had shifted to a large map mounted on the far wall. Hundreds of colored markers covered the western United States. Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Colorado. Each location had notes beside it, coordinates, dates, tracking information. Emily, Walter said quietly, come look at this. She crossed the room and immediately went pale. I know some of these locations. From where? Search operations, missing person cases, emergency deployments. Walter frowned. Then why are they all connected? Before Emily could answer, a computer screen suddenly flickered to life. Chief barked once. Everyone turned toward the monitor. A login screen appeared, then another. Finally, a video window opened automatically. A man in a gray jacket appeared on the screen. His face looked tired, concerned. He glanced over his shoulder before speaking. If you are watching this, then Ranger and Scout succeeded. Walter looked at the dogs, neither moved. The man continued. My name is Daniel Mercer. I helped build this facility. We created it to support search and rescue operations across the Rockies. But over time, the project changed. Certain people realized the system could locate far more than missing hikers. Emily stepped closer. What does that mean? The video continued. The data collected here became valuable, too valuable. People began hiding information, manipulating records, using the network for purposes it was never intended to serve. Walter folded his arms. I knew there was more to this. On the screen, Mercer lowered his voice. Everything you need is stored in the archive room. The truth is there, but if Ranger and Scout reached you, then others are already searching. Suddenly, a warning alarm echoed somewhere deeper inside the facility. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. Chief spun toward a side hallway. Ranger and Scout did the same. A second alarm sounded. Then a computerized voice echoed through the underground chamber. External access detected. Security doors opening. The alarm continued pulsing through the underground facility. Red lights reflected across the concrete walls as Walter looked toward the side hallway. Archive room, he said. That is where Mercer told us to go. Emily nodded. Then we move. Chief was already heading down the corridor. Ranger and Scout followed close behind. The hallway twisted deeper into the mountain before ending at a reinforced steel door standing partially open. Walter stepped inside first. Shelves filled the room from floor to ceiling. Thousands of documents sat organized inside labeled boxes. Computer servers lined the far wall. Good Lord, Walter whispered. Emily moved toward a workstation. This is decades of information. She powered on a terminal while Walter began opening folders. Within minutes, both of them understood why someone wanted the facility hidden. The archive contained records from hundreds of search and rescue operations throughout the Rockies, missing hikers with lost campers, emergency response missions. But many files had been altered. Entire reports had disappeared. Locations had been changed. Evidence had been removed. "Look at this," Emily said. Walter joined her. On the screen appeared a list of properties scattered across several states. Each location connected back to organizations and individuals who had quietly acquired land after search operations ended nearby. They were using the network to identify valuable locations, Emily said. Then burying the information. Walter frowned, and nobody noticed. The people involved controlled the records. Chief suddenly barked. Walter turned. Ranger and Scout stood near a lower cabinet at the back of the room. Both dogs were staring at it. "What did you find?" Walter asked. He knelt and opened the drawer. Inside sat a sealed envelope labeled "Final Evidence Package." Emily's eyes widened. "That is it." Walter carefully opened the envelope. Inside were signed statements, original reports, and storage drives containing complete records. Everything Mercer had hidden before disappearing. "This proves everything," Emily said softly. "Every altered file, every cover-up." Before Walter could answer, the facility speakers crackled overhead. A new voice echoed through the halls, calm, controlled, familiar. "Mr. Briggs, you have been very difficult to find." Walter froze. Emily looked toward the ceiling. "They are inside," the voice continued. "You do not need to be afraid, we only want the archive." Walter slipped the evidence package into his backpack. "Funny," he said quietly. "That makes me want to keep it even more." Chief moved to the doorway and stood watch. Ranger and Scout joined him. For several seconds, the room remained silent except for the distant alarm. Then another sound appeared, not approaching footsteps, multiple voices, different voices, radio traffic, commands. Emily looked confused. "Wait." Walter listened carefully. "Those are not the same people." Suddenly, a new voice boomed through the speakers. "Federal agents, remain where you are." Emily stared at Walter. Walter stared at Emily. Chief's ears shot upright. Ranger and Scout began wagging their tails for the first time since arriving. Then the speakers went silent. Somewhere beyond the archive room, a heavy security door opened with a loud metallic crash. Walter tightened his grip on the backpack as the metallic echoes rolled through the facility. Chief stood at the doorway, focused and alert. Ranger and Scout waited beside him. Then several figures appeared at the far end of the corridor wearing jackets marked with federal agency insignia. One woman stepped forward and raised her hands calmly. "Mr. Briggs?" she called. "My name is Sarah Collins. We are here for the archive." Walter glanced at Emily. "Friend or problem?" Emily studied the agents for a moment before exhaling with relief. "Friend." The tension in the room eased instantly. Chief relaxed first. Ranger and Scout followed. Sarah approached carefully. "We have been trying to locate this facility for months," she said. "The dogs disappeared before we could secure the evidence." Walter removed the sealed package from his backpack. "I believe this belongs to you." Sarah accepted it with obvious relief. She opened the envelope, reviewed several documents, and smiled. "This is everything." Emily looked at Walter. "You actually did it." Walter chuckled softly. "I was planning on spending this week repairing a fence." Several agents began collecting files from the archive room. Others secured the computer servers. Within an hour, years of hidden records were finally being documented properly. As the operation continued, Sarah approached Walter again. "There is something you should know." "I am listening." "The information in this archive will help correct hundreds of altered records and solve questions that have remained unanswered for years." Walter nodded. "Then Mercer was telling the truth." "Yes." Sarah looked toward Ranger and Scout. "And those two dogs made it possible." Ranger wagged his tail. Scout pressed against Emily's side. Chief watched all of them with quiet satisfaction. 3 weeks later, spring sunlight replaced the winter storms that had blanketed the valley. Walter sat on his porch with a cup of coffee while Chief rested beside his chair. A government vehicle slowly pulled into the driveway. Sarah stepped out carrying a small wooden box. "I figured you would be here," she said. "Not many places I would rather be." She handed him the box. Inside rested a medal engraved with a simple inscription honoring civilian service and extraordinary assistance. Walter stared at it for several seconds. "You really did not have to do this." Sarah smiled. "Actually, we did." Emily emerged from the passenger side holding 2 leashes. Ranger and Scout bounded toward the porch. Chief immediately greeted them. "I thought they were going somewhere else," Walter said. Emily shook her head. "Their retirement paperwork finally came through." Walter raised an eyebrow. "And?" Emily smiled. "They requested this address." Walter laughed. "Dogs do not fill out paperwork." "Maybe not," Emily replied, "but they made their opinion very clear." Ranger settled beside Chief. Scout stretched out in the warm sun. For the first time since Walter found them in the snow, all three dogs looked completely at peace. Sarah glanced across the valley. Funny how one cold night changed everything. Walter looked at the three shepherds lying together on the porch. Not everything, he said softly. Some things were exactly what they were supposed to be. Chief lifted his head and placed it against Walter's leg. Walter scratched behind the German shepherd's ears and smiled. After years of silence, the old cabin no longer felt empty. And for the first time in a very long time, neither did Walter Briggs. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with friends who might enjoy it too. We would love to know where you are watching from. Tell us your city and country in the comments. More heartfelt and unforgettable hero dog stories are already waiting for you. See you in the next one.